Hello once again. I have something a little different but really neat to show you guys today. This is something that I got for Christmas this year. This is a Marlboro Power Pak jumper pack. And it was made around 1996 or 97. And you heard me right. Marlboro. That Marlboro, the one that sells tobacco products. This was sold by them. They had a catalog called Marlboro Miles, and apparently when you bought various Marlboro products, you collected points. And you could go through this Marlboro Miles catalog and you could buy neat things with the points that you racked up by buying their various tobacco products. And this was one of them. And as I said, this is a jumper pack. This is something you'd use to, for example, jumpstart a car or as an emergency power source. I only heard of these starting, I guess, a few months ago. I think I came across one on eBay. It just showed up in my things you might like section on eBay. And I honestly just instantly became very interested in it. Not because of the mystery behind the brand name on it, but because this is just a really cool jumper pack. I've told the story to you guys before. You know, I've always been interested in portable power packs and stuff. I've talked about when I was a kid, the first time I ever saw one, my grandfather got a Motomaster Eliminator Power Box 650 or whatever with a 650 watt inverter. And we had a lot of fun, him showing it to me how it could run his big 42-inch CRT television and stuff like that, and it was just amazing to me. Convenient household power in a portable package, and I've always just loved stuff like that. So I've got my other jumper pack, my X-Power one, which you see down there plugged in. A few months ago, I replaced the battery in it. It's got a brand new battery in it now. Tried to sell it, but nobody wanted it, so I guess I'll be keeping it now. But yeah, when I saw this one on eBay, it just seemed so cool to me, and I'm like, I really wanted to get one. So I put a search for them on eBay, and once in a while one would come in, and you'd only see one or two on eBay at any given time. Surprisingly expensive, considering that most of the ones on eBay were sold as totally untested. But normally you'd see them for like $50 or $60, even $70, which I think's quite a lot. But around Christmas time, this one showed up. I think it was like $40 plus shipping or something like that. So I sent it off to Mom and I said, hey, if you're looking for something to get me for Christmas, and well, here we are. So this is really neat. So it came in the original nylon bag with the big emblem on it. Very neat. And I also got it with the owner's manual, which we'll look at later. So this was a really good deal because a lot of them, this is the first one I've ever seen that has the owner's manual, and a lot of them that you see don't have the nylon bag. So I got the whole package with this one. I got the charge cable that I'm not sure all the ones on eBay come with. I got the entire package here for, I guess, a really good price. Like I said, considering how old these are and the fact that every single one of these you'll buy on eBay, unless the seller has replaced the battery, it's going to have a completely dead, unusable lead-acid battery inside it. I still think it was too much money, but for what these go for, I think I got an okay deal. Maybe these are collectible. Maybe that's why they go for quite a bit of money. Although they don't seem to be particularly hot selling. The ones I looked at generally took a long time to sell, so I don't know. But anyway, let's get this out of the nylon bag and we'll take a look at it. I'll first show that the nylon bag has this nice strap on it so you can toss it over your shoulder, which I've done a couple of times. The unit isn't too heavy. I can pick it up with a little bit of effort with one hand. It's got a 7 amp hour lead acid battery inside it. And I don't know if this sort of hunter green color is the original color, or if the plastic has started yellowing and that's how the color translated. I don't know. But aside from that, this thing is in mint condition. It looks perfect, really. There's really no sign of wear anywhere. Now, with that said, I don't believe that this was babied. I believe this was used, because if you look at the two power switches there, the one on the left, which is the main switch, the print is fading on it compared to the one on the right. So I believe this probably did see quite a bit of use, but it was taken very good care of, which is very cool. So yeah, here's the unit. There's what it looks like. No inverter, you might see, no 120 volt inverter on this. So it's not quite as useful as a jumper pack would otherwise be, but it's still very cool. And of course, you can use the cigarette lighter sockets, which are right here, or the jumper cables, which are hidden in compartments in here, to run a external inverter if you wanted to. So yeah, 7 amp hour lead acid battery. This is compared to my other jumper pack, which has a 10 amp hour lead acid battery. And the original battery in it was 13 amp hours, I think, but the one in it now, which is the same size as 10. This is 7. That's what the original battery was rated for. And like I said, I got this. The seller didn't say whether it was tested or not. They just said great condition, so I prepared for the fact that the battery was completely unusable, and indeed it was. I took the battery out, gave a noble effort to get it revived. I filled it up with water. It drank an entire glass of water. Put it on a charger, drew no current. I put it on higher voltage DC. I put it on a 32 volt DC power supply, and it drew current in the microamp range. The battery was completely destroyed. It was done. So that was that. But as luck would have it, I had another battery, the exact right type for this thing. So I stuck it in there, and it works. So the battery that's in this now, it's not a new battery. It's quite an old battery that I actually I don't remember if the battery in this is one that I had to revive and fill with water and stuff. It's a battery that I don't even remember where I got it from, but I would guess that it was used in an emergency light situation or something like that. I got it, I think, with a decent charge on it, and it charged up, and it does not hold its rated capacity anymore. I think I tested it once to be only 3 or 4 amp hours instead of 7 amp hours. But it works just fine, and it's certainly an upgrade from a completely unusable battery that this thing originally shipped with. So that's nice. So let's go over this thing. First of all, I quite like the utilitarian cosmetic design of this thing. I think this thing is very handsome. I'm not a fan of modern jumper packs now where they're all sporty looking. They're trying to make them look cool with these bright colors and stuff. By comparison, this thing is very utilitarian, and I am a big fan of that. So starting out with, we have 2, not 1 but 2, lights that can be used here. We have this big fluorescent area lamp. It's a 12 watt fluorescent lamp. And we have this incandescent lamp, which can serve as either a solid light or a flashing light. It's got a solid state circuit that can flash the light. So I can turn them on here. The left switch here, push it down, that turns on the fluorescent light. And it's very nice. It's your standard electronic instant start ballast, but it's a very good one. The lamp starts instantly, and it's nice and bright. It's a very good electronic ballast. So you can see, you can see the fluorescent lamp in this thing is quite nice. You can hear a high-pitched squeal from the ballast, but it's not too bad. But yeah, that's very nice. And then the incandescent light, you can turn it on solid. I believe this has a 10 watt bulb in it. It's a festoon lamp. And then you've got the blinking mode, and this red lens easily pops off. They meant for it to pop off, so you could use the incandescent lamp as an ordinary white lamp. So you could have a secondary area lamp in addition to the fluorescent lamp. So where's the switch? And you can operate them simultaneously. So that's some nice nice versatility there. So very nice. And yeah, this red lens easily pops on and off. You see some of these on eBay that don't have the red lamp. I have a feeling that sometimes they can just fall off and get lost, because if you don't be sure to push it in securely when you put the red lens back on, it may fall off and get lost. So sometimes you see one of these on eBay that does not have the red lens. Moving on, we have an analog battery gauge. When you turn on the unit or turn on either of the lights or whatever, it gives you a reading of how the battery is doing. This gauge is, in my opinion, not very accurate. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it is functioning correctly. But I think the way it was designed, it reads the voltage extremely optimistically. I actually took the time to document it and take some readings and see what voltage is what on this gauge. So I've drawn up the gauge here, you can see. And as you can see, it reads the absolute maximum off-scale high at only 12.3 volts. So at only 12.3 volts, which in my opinion is like a middle ground, sort of a nominal voltage for a 12 volt lead acid battery, certainly not fully charged. 12.3 volts, it's reading off-scale high, totally as high as the meter will go. When it gets to the line between good and booster, that's 11.7 volts. So according to this gauge and the way they've designed it, if the needle is right in that diagonal line between good and booster, according to the manual, it's good enough to jumpstart your car or whatever. But that's only 11.7 volts. I mean, that battery, a 12 volt lead acid battery at 11.7 volts is quite discharged by that point. Or, you know, it's quite a bit discharged, not fully discharged. I took some more readings. In the middle of the good section, it's 11.5 volts. When it gets to the line between the questionable area and good, it's at 11.4 volts. The bottom of the questionable area is 11.3. And then the bottom of the recharge section, off-scale low, is 11.1 volts. So this entire area of the gauge, the whole recharge section, the needle swings between only 11.1 and 11.3 volts. Just 200 millivolts causes that much deflection, whereas the rest of this gauge, a little more than half of it, spans over a volt. Or about a volt, actually. So that in itself is a little weird, but yeah, my biggest problem with this gauge is how optimistically it reads it. In my opinion, if I were designing a gauge like this to be used with a 12 volt lead acid battery, the gauge would read maximum at, I'd say 12.8 volts. It would read in the middle, you know, in the diagonal line between good and booster, I'd put that at maybe 12.3 volts. The line between the questionable area and good, I'd make that 12.0, maybe 11.8 or 9 volts. And then the top of the recharge section, I'd put that at like 11.7, 11.8 volts. And then the bottom of the recharge section, I would keep that at 11 volts, which is how they've done it, how they've designed it here as well. So yeah, I think for the most part, it's a very optimistic reading gauge. And according to how they've designed it, if your battery is at least 11.4 volts, you're good to jumpstart a car, which you're not going to have a lot of, you know, as small as a jumper pack is, you know, it's already a very heavy load on even a fully charged small lead acid battery to jumpstart a car. If the battery's at 11.4 volts, there's no way in heck you're going to be able to jumpstart your car. So yeah, I think they kind of flubbed the design of this meter. I doubt that it's a misalignment on my part. I think it is functioning as intended. It's just they designed it to be super optimistic. But that's just a hang-up on my part. It does its job fundamentally. So, then we get to these two cigarette lighter jacks, which as you can see, one of them's 12 volts, the other one is 6 volts, so you do get a 6 volt or regulated 6 volt cigarette lighter adapter, which is very impressive. I don't know if I've ever seen jumper packs with a feature like that, a 6 volt cigarette lighter adapter. Both of these outlets are switched. They are switched through this left switch here, so you'll see when I hit the left switch up, which is power on, it doesn't turn on any of the lights, but the gauge becomes active, and this little red power LED lights up, and now these cigarette lighter jacks are connected. So they are switched. and they're also run through a circuit protection. There's a little automatic circuit breaker there, so if you overload either of these cigarette lighter jacks, I don't know what the limit is, I think 10 amps or something like that, a circuit breaker will automatically trip and then automatically reset when you turn power off and turn it back on. So that's very nice, they're circuit protected. Now, while I have no hang-ups about the 6-volt jack being run through all this, considering it's, you know, being run through a regulator anyway and stuff like that, I do kind of wish that the 12-volt jack was just directly connected to the battery, just directly hardwired to the battery, and that's how it is on my other jumper pack. On my other jumper packs, the cigarette lighter is just connected directly to the battery through a 15 amp automotive fuse that's easily replaceable. But I kind of wish this one was that way rather than being through the power switch, because a feature my other jumper pack has is that you can charge it through the cigarette lighter jack. It came with a cable that has a male cigarette lighter plug on both ends. You plug one into the cigarette lighter jack on the jumper pack and one into your car, and it'll charge the jumper pack through the cigarette lighter while you're in your car, which I think is a very useful feature. I wish that could be done with this unit, but it can't. And the reason I wish it could be done with this unit is because the built-in charging circuitry that's used to charge the battery, that's also a little weird, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But anyway, yeah, you've got your 2 cigarette lighter jacks, run through the switch, automatic circuit protector. It's actually a pretty fancy circuit, fancier than I would have expected. You can see there it says Power Pak. This obviously was not manufactured by Marlboro. This was manufactured by another company for them. I know the name of that company. It's actually in the owner's manual. We'll take a look at the owner's manual later and show you that and some other interesting stuff that's in the owner's manual. But let's turn this around. We'll take a look at the back. Actually, you know what? Before we look in the back, I'm going to show you the jumper cables. So the jumper cables are hidden in really nice, convenient side compartments here, which I really like that design. On my big jumper pack, they're just wrapped around this thing on the back, and it's, you know, it works, but it's not as elegant as this solution. So yeah, you open these little doors and it says booster cable, and it's got the polarity on each one. You can see. You open the door and there's your booster cable hanging on a peg there. And yeah, that's very nice. Now, if you know a bit about this stuff, you may be gawking at the absolutely thin wiring for these booster cables. The wiring for these booster cables is extremely thin. I wonder if the gauge is printed on it. I think it might be. Oh, it says... Oh, is that a wire area? It says 5.5 millimeters squared. So I might be able to reference that to an American wire gauge. If I had to guess, I would say, 8 or 10 gauge maybe. It might be in the manual as well, but I'll have to look up that 5.5 millimeters squared later and take a look. But yeah, you don't need numbers or math to know that these are very thin jumper cables. And that's sort of the biggest weak point of this thing, in my opinion, is the absolutely thin jumper cables they put on this. And they didn't do this out of negligence. They knew they were doing this, and they acknowledge in the manual that this jumper pack is not designed to jumpstart a vehicle with a completely dead battery. It is meant to assist the vehicle's battery in starting the engine. They say it's probably good enough to start a small engine, but when it comes to cars, it's really not going to jumpstart your car if the battery's completely flat. The battery has to have some charge in it. Now you may be saying, well, Flo, you wouldn't expect a 7 amp hour battery to be able to start a car with a completely dead battery. Well, actually, yes I would. My big jumper pack has a 10 amp hour battery, and I know from experience, because I had to do it, it will effortlessly start a 2.0 four-cylinder engine with a completely flat battery. I'm talking like no dome lights, no dash lights, absolutely no electronic response when you turn the key, a completely flat battery. I had to jump start the car once, and that jumper pack did it effortlessly, cranked it over almost as fast as the normal car battery with just a 10 amp hour UPS battery. So this thing being 7 amp hours, I would expect it to still be, you know, given obviously the battery I have in this now would never do it, but given a good condition fresh battery, I wouldn't put it past a 7 amp hour battery to be able to jumpstart a completely dead car. But this thing, with these really thin jumper cables, it ain't happening. They're just too thin. The high current going through them is going to create such a voltage drop that it's just not going to be able to turn it over. But if the battery is just weak, you know, if it's got enough charge to turn on the ignition and everything like that, but not turn it over the engine, I can see this still being able to assist it enough to start your car. For a small engine anyway, if you had a truck with a V8 or something, I don't know if this would even help in that situation. I'm just noticing the gross, I don't know what the hell that is, but I just dug it out of the bottom of the battery compartment. Get rid of that. Or the bottom of the jumper cable compartment, rather. But yeah, I have no doubt for a lawnmower, or maybe a four-wheeler, or even a motorcycle, this thing would be able to jumpstart you with a completely dead battery, but it ain't happening with a car, not with these really thin jumper cables. And they acknowledge that in the manual, and they say it's probably not. They say two things. First, they say it's probably not going to be able to jumpstart your car with a completely dead battery. The second thing they say is, when attempting to jumpstart your car, don't try to crank it over for more than a second or two. Probably because the high current going through the cables would end up melting them, possibly. So it's a small, weak jumper pack, not meant to be able to function in every circumstance, but in mild circumstances, it will possibly be able to get the job done. But with that said, the other functions it provides with the cigarette lighter jacks and the auxiliary lights, it's certainly going to be able to do those jobs just fine. Run a air compressor through the cigarette lighter jack, I have no doubt that it'd be able to do that. Run a searchlight or something, I have no doubt it'd be able to do that. Run an inverter, like a small, you know, 75, 125, 250 watt inverter, I have no doubt it would absolutely be able to do that. So this thing ain't a jack of all trades, but it is a jack of many. So I took a look at the American wire gauge chart on Wikipedia here, and 5.5 millimeter square area is just a little better than 10 gauge, so I was actually right on the money there. And 10 gauge wire has an ampacity of 30 to 40 amps. That is bad. That is really thin wire for jump starting applications. Now I did some looking up to find, you know, exactly how much current a car starter draws when it's starting the engine, and of course that's going to vary greatly depending on the car and the size of the engine and all that. A reference I found was a 4-cylinder Hyundai, and the starter of a 4-cylinder Hyundai draws about 100 amps. That is, however, a direct drive starter because Hyundai's cheap crap and they feel like sticking with 1970s technology. But a 4-cylinder Hyundai with a direct drive starter draws about exactly 100 amps of current with a fresh battery. So that's a lot of current. And I did the calculations, and based on, you know, the given resistance for 10 gauge wire. And with 100 amps running through this wire, which of course it would only be able to do that for, I don't know, a couple of minutes before it started melting anyway. But the voltage drop across just one cable would be like 0.3 of a volt. That's a lot of voltage drop. And I did the calculations. That means there's about 30 watts of power being dissipated as waste heat per cable. So double that for both jumper cables. That's a lot of power loss, a lot of voltage drop. I brought over my Xantrex jumper pack so we could compare the wires. So here's the Marlboro jumper pack's cable compared to the Xantrex. So the Xantrex cables are way bigger. Still quite small as far as jumper cables are concerned, but you know, not nearly as bad. And take a look at the difference in the clamps. Oh my god, these clamps are so wimpy compared to these. Although, to be fair, they do got really good spring action, and you do get quite a bit of metal surface to hook onto. But yeah, they're just so much smaller, it's kind of funny. But yeah, so of course these two jumper packs were built for quite different purposes. This jumper pack claims, I think, that it could jump up to a 6-cylinder engine with a completely dead battery, and this thing says that it can't jumpstart any car engine with a completely dead battery. You have to have some charge in the battery, but it'll possibly be able to start small engines with a completely dead battery. But yeah, quite the difference there. Two products made for slightly different expectations. And comparing the size of the two units here, if we do a profile shot here, the Xantrex has a much bigger girth just because of the far larger battery that's in it. And it's way heavier as well. A sticker on the top says, "Caution! Recharge after every use. Refer to owner's manual for charging instructions." Well, how do you charge this thing? Well, if you go around the back, there is yet another secret compartment here, and that's where the charging cable is held. If we open this up, there is your charging cable. You've got a cigarette lighter jack to plug into your car, and you've actually got two connectors at the other end. There's two barrel jacks here, but one of them is just used for charging the unit, is this one with the red cap. So you pull the red cap off, and you plug this into the charge jack, which is right there, and then you plug this into your car, and that charges the battery while your car's running. And oh, it just occurred to me, I actually didn't get the full package with this because Marlboro also gave you an AC adapter, so you could charge it in your home. I didn't get that part, which is okay. And then right here, you actually have a spare 10 amp fuse. It's a little glass fuse that pulls out of there. It's in there quite tightly, so I don't want to break it. But that is a fuse that goes in this plug here. So in the event that too much power goes through this plug, there's a 10 amp fuse that blows, and they gave you a spare one. That's quite nice. Now the reason this cable is fused, and the reason it has two plugs on it, is that in addition to being used for charging the unit, this could also be used as a supplied power cable to power stuff with it. You could plug this into the cigarette lighter, either cigarette lighter, and then you had the barrel jacks to plug into your whatever you wanted. And the reason there's two barrel jacks is because there's one for each polarity. One is center positive and one is center negative. So that's very nice. So if you had, you know, an oddball device that had a center negative plug on it, you could power it with this thing, or use the cord in your car to power it straight from your car. But yeah, that's very nice. And I actually haven't tried this yet, but I figure I'll do it now. Here is my Sony Watchman FD210. It runs on 6 volts, center negative. So not a lot of stuff that's center negative. It's kind of annoying, but the Marlboro Power Pak gives you a cord that has a center negative plug if you want it. So this is the center positive plug that I have here, so I want the other one, the one with the black cap on it. So I've gone ahead and plugged it into the 6 volt cigarette lighter jack, and I'll take our center negative plug and plug it into the Watchman, and hopefully it comes on as expected. Oh, I forgot to turn the power switch on. Scared myself for a second there. Power switch is now on because the cigarette lighter sockets are switched. And now I turn it on, and it comes right on indeed. And there you go. So you can run your center negative Sony Watchmans off a Marlboro Power Pak thanks to the included charge cord. That's an extremely handy feature. That's really nice thinking there, that they gave you a cable with both types of plugs on it. Exact same plug, just different polarity. That is so convenient. That's really nice thinking on their part, on the manufacturer's part. The center negative cable is labeled warning for only power supply, and the center positive cable is labeled warning for only charge and power supply, because the charger requires center positive power. So you can only use this one to charge the unit. Now, I mentioned that I wish that the 12-volt cigarette lighter socket was wired directly to the battery so you could charge it through the cigarette lighter socket. The reason I wish that is because the charging on this thing kind of sucks. I have found essentially that you need a voltage way higher than 12 volts for the built-in charging circuitry on this to operate properly. It states in the manual that if your car's running and of course the alternator's charging, you'll charge the unit at full voltage, and it says that if you charge through the AC adapter that they gave you, it would charge at a reduced rate, like 10 hours instead of 4 hours, because the voltage output by the AC adapter wasn't as high as the output of a running car's alternator. But I found that you need an absurdly high voltage to get the charging circuitry in this to activate such that the charge light comes on and it charges at full current. And I've found that to be, I don't know how much, 15 or 16 volts, and the way I found that out accidentally, because I noticed that when I plugged this into my Marlboro power supply, which outputs 13.3 volts to charge it, the charging light wouldn't come on, but it would charge. It would just charge really slowly. It'd be like an overnight charge. And it would only charge the battery up to 12.8 volts, which is okay, but not as high as what I expected. 12.8 volts is a fine float charge voltage. It's just not what I would have expected. And the charge light just never came on. So I plugged this into the charger for my Xantrex Power Pak, which is rated for an output of 13.5 volts, and the charge light came right on. Well, I measured it with a multimeter and discovered that the charger for my Xantrex Power Pak actually puts out like 19 volts open circuit. It must be a unregulated supply basically, so I imagine it's probably going down to 14, 15, 16 volts under load, and that's enough voltage to activate the charging circuitry. So I'm not sure if there's something wrong with the charging circuitry and it's taking way higher voltage to activate than it should, or if that's just the way it's designed, and I don't know. I've never tried charging this with a in a running car to see if, 14 volts or whatever is enough to activate the charging circuitry. But, so I just live with it as is. It does charge just fine plugged into the Marlboro power supply. The charge light just never comes on. It's supposed to come on when it's charging and then go out when it's done charging. In this case, it just never comes on, and the battery does slowly trickle charge pretty much. And it charges up to 12.8 volts, which isn't as high as, I would think, but it's fine. 12.8 volts is a fine float voltage for the battery. It's quite a gentle float voltage, so you'll actually extend the life of the battery by charging it up to that point, as opposed to charging it up to like 14 volts, which is what my Xantrex Power Pak does. Xantrex has automated charging circuitry that charges it up to 14 volts and then shuts off charging when it reaches 14 volts. So this is a bit gentler on the battery, if not what it was designed for. Figured I'd test the 12 volt jack with a Motorola bag phone. Haven't played with one of these in a long time. Turn it on here. Works just fine. What's the battery meter say? Quite on the low side. But the boost gauge, it's off scale high. It's as high as it can go. So that's quite something. Like I said, really optimistic gauge. There's a warning label, or not a warning label, an instruction label on the back here. We'll read. It says, engine start assist. Turn the power pack on, observe the battery check meter in the booster zone. Turn off all vehicle lights and accessories. Connect the red booster clip to the positive. Now it says connect the black booster clip to the negative. That's not the way it should be done. Your black cable should be connected to a vehicle ground, like a metal part of the engine or the frame or something. Here they've said just connect both leads right to the battery. I don't know if there's a thoughtful reason they said that, but it's not the norm that you should do. I wouldn't do it with this. Attempt start using short bursts of the starter, and of course that's because of the those thin jumper cables. If vehicle has a manual transmission, depress the clutch to reduce starter load. After starting, carefully remove the booster clips and recharge power pack. If the engine does not start promptly, disconnect black booster clip, wait 3 to 5 minutes, reconnect and try starting again. That's weird. I would think you'd want to keep it connected during the off time so that it has an opportunity to charge the battery before you try starting again. I don't know. That's kind of weird. Again, that's not something I would do. The charge circuitry in this is also a little weird. If you attempt to turn anything on or power something while the charge is connected, it'll trip the circuit breaker. So it'll cut off the lights, the cigarette lighter sockets, and even the gauge will stop working. And then you have to turn the switch off and back on to reset it. But yeah, if you turn anything on while it's charging, it'll just immediately cut the breaker. So I guess that's sort of a safety feature there. And it says, made in Korea. If I wasn't feeling so lazy, I'd open this up so we could take a look inside, maybe show you what the circuitry looks like, but I don't feel like it. But for now, let's take a look at the owner's manual for this thing. So here's the owner's manual. Power Pak for active sports, leisure, auto, and home use. And the first thing I noticed when I looked at this has this, thing telling you to read the instructions, really important, blah, blah, blah. And I noticed that the Marlboro logo there just looks kind of pasted in. It looks really, it just looks like sort of an afterthought. Maybe it isn't, I don't know, but that was what sort of tuned me into thinking that maybe this was sold under different brand names and they could just, the manufacturer would just stick the appropriate brand name on the owner's manual. But in all the research I've done, I cannot find any evidence that this jumper pack was ever manufactured or sold under another brand name other than Marlboro. Dual 6-volt 12-volt outputs, which may be used to power many portable electrical appliances, boost automobile, ATV, motorcycle, jet ski, lawn tractor, etc. batteries to assist in starting. Just connect the Marlboro Power Pak battery cables and activate the ignition to start. Work/night light, both incandescent and fluorescent, illuminates work area when making emergency repairs, ideal for camping, fishing, and other leisure activities. Yeah, I can see this being extremely useful if you keep it in a car for like changing a tire at night or whatever with that fluorescent lamp. Used for lighting and as a battery backup during power outages. Warning light, snap-on red lens converts light. Battery checker, built-in meter, monitor state of charge of the Marlboro Power Pak battery, and it'll tell you that it's good even if it's nearly dead. Two-way charging system, recharge using your car battery via cigarette lighter socket or in your home using AC adapter, which is included. Internal circuit breaker, automatically protects Marlboro Power Pak battery from short circuits and excessive output. Circuit breaker resets itself when problem is corrected. In my experience, no, it doesn't reset itself. It resets when you turn off power and back on. Yeah, it says observe when you're charging it, observe that the Power Pak's green charging light illuminates. The unit will automatically charge while driving. The green charging light will flash when it's fully charged. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it just went out. So it's supposed to flash when it's fully charged. Charging may take up to 4 hours if the Power Pak battery was fully discharged prior to charging. Same thing with the AC adapter. It says observe that the charging light illuminates, and it says it'll take 10 hours when charging through the AC adapter. The green charging light will flicker or go out, indicating that charging has been completed. So you have really strange charging circuitry. So apparently on the lower voltage supplied by the AC adapter, you know it's charged when the green light starts flickering. That's just weird. Here they admit the capacity of the Marlboro Power Pak is adequate for starting most recreational vehicles and small automotive engines with dead batteries. Oh, so they do say that you can start a small car with a totally dead battery. Well, regardless that they say that, I wouldn't put much hope of it. 7 amp hour lead acid battery is going to have a hard enough time without those really thin jumper cables. But yeah, that was another accidental error on my part when I said earlier that they admitted that it wasn't suitable for starting dead cars. Apparently they say it is suitable for starting small dead cars. But it says for larger automotive engines, the Power Pack will assist in starting if the battery is weak, but will not start a large automotive engine if the battery is completely dead. In addition to its use as an engine starting aid, the Marlboro Power Pack has a variety of applications as a source of 6-volt and 12-volt AC power with a capacity of up to 120 watts. So that would be 10 amps for the 12-volt socket or 20 amps for the 6-volt socket, so that's pretty good. I would assume that for the 6-volt socket it's still just 10 amps, but I don't know. If the automatic internal circuit breaker trips while using the Power Pack, disconnect all appliances, turn off all lights, and recharge the unit before further use. What? If the circuit breaker trips, they want you to recharge it? If the circuit breaker trips, it's because something's shorting out. But I do know that this does have a low battery cutoff. Once the battery becomes too low, it will cut power off, which I think that's really smart. That'll save your battery. That's quite nice design. But I find it kind of odd that they say if the circuit breaker trips, disconnect everything and recharge it. They don't say, if it trips because the battery's dead, as opposed to if it trips because of a short circuit or whatever. So they don't distinguish between that. Do not plug an automotive type cigarette lighter into the Marlboro Power Pack output socket. So that's, they're talking about an actual cigarette lighter. You push it in and it gets really hot and it pops and you light your cigarette. I wonder how much current those actually draw. They get red hot, but they're just a little thing. I wonder if they draw more than 10 amps of current. The fluorescent lamp may not light at temperatures less than 40 degrees. I doubt that. I think it very much would. It's an instant start ballast. And then they give you a nice chart here of approximate power consumption for common things you might run off this and how long you can expect them to run. They give an example as high as 80 watts, a car vacuum cleaner, 0.3 hours. That's 3/10 of an hour, 3/10 of 60 minutes, 18 minutes. They give you instructions on how to replace both of the lamps in this, the fluorescent lamp and the incandescent bulb, and the fuse in the cord. And here's your specifications. Output, DC 12 volt, 10 amps, and 6 volt. They don't give a current rating for the 6 volt. Lamp, 10 watt for the incandescent light and a 12 watt fluorescent light. Sealed lead acid battery, 7 amp hours. Charging time, 4 hours in the car, 10 hours on the AC adapter. Net weight, 4.4 kilograms, that's this many pounds. 10 amp fuse in the cigarette lighter cord. And then they give you a little chart here of the expected translation of the battery capacity with different temperatures. We're now on the very last page of the manual, which I think is the most interesting page because it gives away a lot of interesting info. First, it starts with your Marlboro Power Pack comes with a limited warranty through 31st of December 1997, so that tells us already that this thing would have been made, well, if it's a 1-year warranty, December of 96, but we know this was made in 96 or 97. That's pretty certain. But I find it really weird that they've printed the exact date the warranty ends right in the manual. Did they change this and print updated manuals with updated dates, as the months went on that they made these? Or were all of them made, was it just made for a very short time period and the warranty on all of them ended the day before New Year's 1998? I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. And then they say if it has a defect, return it to, and here is the manufacturer, Jackal Inc. Never heard of them, Middlesex, New Jersey. I looked them up, and I honestly forget if, I can't remember. I looked it up through the Internet Archive. I forget if they're still in operation or not. Totally don't remember anymore. But yeah, Jackal Inc. There's the manufacturer of this, and again, I've done lots of Googling. Can't find any evidence of any other jumper packs being made by Jackal Inc. or sold under Jackal Inc.'s own brand name or anything like that. It says in the unlikely event that the fluorescent lamp needs replacement and you can't locate a bulb locally, send a check to Jackal Inc. for $5 and they will supply a replacement bulb via return mail. That's quite nice of them. And handy because the fluorescent lamp in this, you can see it's a U-bend lamp, It is a standard size, but it's a very uncommon size. This isn't your standard U-bend lamp. It's a T6 lamp, so it's not a PL lamp. It's an FUL lamp. It's called, I forget now, it's called an FUL 12 or something like that. It's way thicker than your standard PL lamp. It's a T6 instead of T4 size, or diameter rather. Yeah, it's called an FUL 12 T6, and I looked it up, and you can buy them. They're not very common, but you can buy them online, so that's nice. I highly doubt I'll ever use this enough where I have to replace the lamp, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Not a very common lamp, but is one that you can still buy replacements for. It's a standard 4-pin lamp, and I forget, I think I looked to see if a standard PL lamp could fit in the socket, so you could replace this with like a PL9 or something, but they won't. I believe the sockets are slightly different and a standard PL lamp will not fit. And then the incandescent lamp here, I believe I said earlier, it's a standard festoon style bulb, so a type of bulb that some cars used for dome lights. I'll actually grab a screwdriver here and I'll just quickly take that screw out so you can take a look at the incandescent lamp. So there's the incandescent lamp. It's a little stubby festoon lamp, a shorter one. I haven't seen one that's really short and stubby like this before, but it's on these little spring-loaded tabs here, and it just pulls right out, and it's got a straight filament in there, and it's rated 12 volts, 8W5. They said it was 10 watts. It says 12 volt, 8W5, so maybe it's 8 watts. And interestingly, it's got a little connector in there so you can disconnect it. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, a little stubby festoon lamp. So I'll just stick that right back in its home there. The cover for the fluorescent lamp pulls off really easily, and you just slide the lamp up and you can pull the socket right out, and then maneuver the lamp around these plastic tabs, being careful that you don't break it, so I'm not going to do it because it's really a two-handed job. But yeah, just snap the bulb out, put the new one in, and snuggle the connector in there. And push it back to get it back to where it was, and snap the cover back on, and there you go. So really easy maintenance on this thing, and getting to the battery's easy too. I'm not going to show you, but there's 5 screws and the rear half comes off and you have access to the battery and the circuit board. The original battery in mine, the clips were soldered or welded onto the battery. They're just, you know, it's a battery with standard fast and bend connectors, FB connectors, and this thing just had standard FB clips clipping onto the battery. But then they were either soldered or welded on there, and on Christmas Day when I got this thing and I had it open ready to replace the battery, I discovered I had to take a flathead screwdriver and a hammer and chisel away at the soldering or welding, whatever it was, until I could get the battery connectors free from the old battery. It took quite a long time, but I eventually got it to got them to come off so I could replace the battery. But yeah, you've got the battery here and then circuit board up here, and it's overall it's quite an easy unit to, you know, to service. Very nice. There's a video on YouTube where somebody took one of these apart because the battery was dead, and I think if I might not be remembering this right, but I think like they weren't sure the battery was no good, and so they pulled the circuit board off to see if there was something wrong with the circuit board. And so you can see them take the circuit board off and get a look at the other side of the circuit board and stuff like that. So yeah, really easy to service. I don't think there were any super complex electronics and stuff. It'd be quite easy to fix, I think, if something electronic went on. So yeah, really nice on that front overall. Well, that's about all there is to show of the Marlboro Power Pak jumper pack from 1990, probably around 1996. A very quirky, interesting, and definitely very unique vintage jumper pack. I quite like the utilitarian design. I quite like the build quality. The build quality in general seems really good. It's definitely got some quirks to it with the charging circuitry and the automatic circuit breaker, which isn't a bad thing. The thin jumper cables, which again, that was just this thing being built to a certain purpose. But overall, it's a really nice small jumper pack. It's not super big like some are. Quite a bit smaller than my Xantrex Power Pack down there. And yeah, it's just really cool, really useful, nicely designed unit, if it is a little quirky here and there. But I'm really glad I got this, really glad I saved it from uncertain doom, was able to get a new battery in it, and that's probably going to be all any of these will ever need. Get one on eBay, it's totally non-functional, just replace the battery in it. You can get a brand new 7 amp hour battery, super common battery size for UPSs and emergency lights and stuff. You can get them for like $30 in the United States plus shipping, so easy to keep one of these going for a long time. But yeah, I'm really glad I got this one. It's very useful. I've already used this one quite a bit. I've used it to power my Browning portal lamp a few times. And I've used it to power some other stuff. I actually plugged a 75-watt inverter into the 12-volt cigarette lighter and used that to power my soldering iron for when I was soldering something and I wasn't near a power outlet, and it did great for that. Yeah, it's a very useful device, very neat, and I'm glad I have it. So I hope you guys enjoyed exploring this thing, and I'll see you in the next video.